Okay, let's talk about screen time. Have you ever allowed your children to have screen time only for the time to end and your kids walk away from the time feeling and acting like out of sort zombies, and you just have this incredible weight of guilt and shame about allowing them to spend time in front of a screen? So today let's talk about taming this screen time beast to actually make it work for us in a way that we can feel good about. So if you stick around to the end of this video, I'm going to share with you our family's number one tip to reining in our screen time after we've had some time of just way too much screen time. So first, let's talk about the way we think about screen time. Now, I'm not coming here to tell you that screen time is wrong and bad and has no place in your lives, and it's a sin if you let your children watch a screen. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I am saying that you should do your research to look into a healthy, what is healthy for your child, and really think about and consider, what are your values? What are your family values? What are your personal values? What are your goals when it comes to your children and your child for this part of their lives? What are your goals that you have for them? And does screen time have a place in your life right now? And if it does, when is the best place for it? And what things are we putting on those screens that will actually be enriching or enhancing or helpful in life right now? So once you do some research and figure out what exactly is a good time, just set those parameters. Like, how much time do I want my child to be spending in front of a screen? And how is that going to look in our family? Like, when is the best time, and when does it serve us for them to be watching a show or playing a video game or whatever it is? How is this going to serve us? Instead of it becoming this addiction thing where we're kind of serving it. So I'm really wanting to be intentional about our screen time and not just limiting it, really choosing that even the screen time that we do have, the shows and the games and the movies, that those really are in alignment with our family values. So I have been watching to see what are the things that my children do that they love spending their time on instead of screens. And so these are the things that my kids love doing that is not screen time. And the first thing is crafting. My children love crafts. I need to change the guest bed here and strip the sheets and everything and get those washed up. But as I came up here, I found one of the things that my kids have been playing with recently, and I just wanted to share with you guys. This is the paper crafts that they've been doing, and by paper crafts I mean the paper play that they've been creating. And yes, this is some of the ways that they spend their time. This is one of my favorite things, is that this actually fits together. You can crack the egg and then you can stack the shells in each other. So that's super fun. Anyways, this is one of the things that my kids do. They love using paper and pencil and markers and scissors and tape and glue and creating things out of almost nothing. Like paper, they create so much with paper, which is wonderful. So having craft supplies, I have an entire drawer of just like pom-poms and pipe cleaners and stickers and just random craft supplies. And it's not a huge drawer, it's just a small drawer, but I always have that available for them. My kids also love building materials. So we have Lego and Duplos, and we just recently were given magnet tiles. And my kids have loved spending time. I mean, they spend hours building and playing with the Lego, Duplo, and magnet tiles. And so that is another amazing option, another wonderful thing that they spend their time on. We also have things like dolls and trucks and little figures that the children will use for imaginative play. They spend a lot of their time playing with, whether it's Playmobil or just small figures. They really spend a lot of time with imaginative play, with these small things. So if you've been on my channel for any length of time, you probably know the next thing I'm going to list as far as things my kids spend their time on, and that is with books. Picture books, chapter books, audiobooks, all of the books my kids love looking at books, reading books, being read to from books, and audiobooks. It's just a huge part of our lives, and I love it. I make sure that there's always books available, and I want my kids to just be surrounded by books and by literature and by stories. And so that is another thing that they love spending their time on is books. Even my 3.5-year-old will happily sit and just look at picture books. And it's, to be honest, it's not that I'm like, okay, go look at a book now, and he goes and does it. It's just that I have books available and I read to him throughout the day. And so he will go on his own and pull out a book and look at it. And so it's not that I'm giving them, okay, go play with Legos or go play with the Duplos. I mean, sometimes I say that to, the 3.5-year-old or the 6-year-old specifically. Sometimes I'll tell him, go and do this. But most of the time it's just them in free play, having these resources and these things available. They will choose to spend their time doing these things, playing with these things. Another way that my kids spend a lot of their time, which is my absolute favorite way for them to spend their time, is outside. Now, we live in a pretty urban area, so we do not have a huge amount of property or a huge plot of land for them to go out and play. But even living in an extremely urban area, they can go outside and spend hours outside. And some of this is upon my encouragement in that I say, okay, go outside for a while and stay outside. But they do everything from riding bikes and playing with chalk, making up their own games, playing tags, swinging on the swings, playing kickball and soccer, playing imaginative play. They've built mud kitchens and all sorts of things outside, and I love it. It is so good to be outside. The research has shown that children who spend time outside are healthier, their mental health is way better, and it's so good for them. It's so good for their bodies. That's my favorite way that my kids spend time, is for them to go outside and play. Now, something to be aware of is that your child is probably going to complain about being bored. If you go from a large amount of screen time, or even a small amount of screen time, and if you take it away, if you reduce the amount of screen time that your child has been given, then, or is used to, is just a habitual part of their lives, then they're going to be bored. And that's not a bad thing. Your child being bored, I think there's this thing in our minds and our bodies, our brains, that like we want to be entertained, to be this flat line, but then when we are bored and we don't have anything to like entertain us and let us shut off our brains from working, then we go into this kind of bored state of mind, and then we get really creative. And I think that especially for children, this there's almost you have to be bored almost in order to be creative. So my suggestion to you is be comfortable with them being bored, and even come up with some suggestions on things that you can encourage them to do if they come to you and say or complain that they are bored. And the first thing that my kids know that I'm going to suggest if they come and complain that they're bored is I will give them their chore, or remind them of a chore to do. A lot of it will just be the chores that I'm doing. If I'm folding clothes and listening to music and they come in and complain that they're bored, I just welcome them in and invite them to fold clothes with me or wash dishes, or whatever I'm doing. I encourage them to just come and be a part of it. And sometimes they will do that. And that's a wonderful way to, build responsibility and build life skills and build relationship with the children. And so that is an important thing, is to invite them into whatever chores or whatever life thing that you are taking care of, making beds or washing windows or whatever it is. Give them some chores, give them something to do with their hands that they can feel accomplished in, and a way that they can participate in the family. So that's the first thing that you could do if they complain that they're bored. Other things that you could do: bake or cook together. That's a great way to spend time together and fight off the disinterest or boredom. Also, encouraging them to care for or play with a pet. If they have a pet that, a dog or a cat or whatever pet that they have that they could play with or care for or just spend time with. Sometimes it's good to encourage them to think outside of themselves whenever they are bored. Also, you could encourage them to garden. You can give them some seeds and, depending on the age, of course, because some of these things you would have to make sure that they are age appropriate for your child. Planting a garden, that's a good way for kids who are bored to use their bodies and their minds to learn about the world and to realize that the world does not revolve around them and that there's something bigger and outside of them that they can contribute to by planting a little seed and keeping it watered and keeping it in the sunshine. Something amazing happens, and it's a great thing for them to do. Check on it every day and map, is there a new sprig or a new leaf today that you could draw. So that's a great way, if they're bored, to keep their minds active and busy. Also, you could have them kind of on the gardening thing, you could have them create a fairy garden or an ogre garden if you have boys that are not into fairies, and you could just give them a plot or a space or a pot for them to find all the little bits and pieces and create a new world. That's a great way for them to spend time and for their brains to be active and imaginative. And if they are not into imagination and imagining stories, then giving them something that they can hold, creating a new world that they can see, is a really good way to engage that creative part of their brain. Also, encouraging them to create music. If they don't have a musical instrument that they are practicing or playing, get them a harmonica and let them just play with the sounds. Give them 2 drumsticks and let them learn rhythm and beat. Music is so good for relaxing our bodies and helping us to feel in control. Playing music, or also just giving them a musical instrument and letting them play with it and figure out how it works and listen to the sounds and listen to the rhythm and make up their own songs. This is a great way for them to be activating those brain cells and learning and growing. So creating music is another great suggestion if your kids come to you and they complain that they're bored. Also, you could have them write a story or write a poem. So my last suggestion for if your child is bored or complaining about boredom is to encourage them to create something and to use their hands to create something. So whether that is painting, whether that is watercolor drawing, whether that is crocheting or sewing. If they're above this crafting, paper crafting sort of thing, then you can definitely go a step farther and encourage them with handicrafts. And I think handicrafts have become so popular again these days. I mean, back 50 years ago, it was just a normal part of childhood and children living life, right? My dad built ham radios as a child. And so building things and creating things with their hands is such an important option for allowing them to be bored and offering them these other options of things that they can do with their time. So thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of this video. If you've made it this far, my number 1 tip for reining in screen time is definitely to just take a break. And sometimes I like to have something I'll dig a new craft out of one of my bins. I'll grab some folders and some paper and just maybe the stamps or the glitter. If we need a break from screen time, then I just say, we're not watching a show today, but you can go get the Play-Doh out. And then, the next day, okay, we're not gonna have screen time today, we're not going to watch movies today, but you can get the Play-Doh out, and once you make a creation, I'll film you and you can create a commercial with your creation, or you can create a video or a story with your creation, and we'll make a movie together. So these are ways that you can just completely cut out screen time for a few days, and that kind of helps to just reset the balance in their brains and in their minds and in their lives. And so that's my number one tip, is to just cut it out completely, to fill it with something different or fun. Just engage with your kids and be present with them, and that helps them, because there is that. I mean, if they have this dopamine rush and all the chemicals that are released in their brains, as their brains just kind of flatline as they're watching something, if they're used to that on a daily basis, then it's hard. You take it away completely, or you reduce the amount of time, then there is this hard part, and it's physiological. There's changes that you've made to their environment, and so you just have to be really gracious. So you have to be aware that these physiological changes are happening whenever you remove this from their environment, but then also realizing there's something that's so much better that's happening. Instead of the screen time where their brains are just kind of flatlining and turning off, you are creating opportunities, and you are creating space for their brains to get incredibly creative, and for their brains to just begin firing at all these levels that wouldn't be possible if they were spending their time in front of a screen. So I just encourage you to take some time to be really intentional. What does screen time look like in our homeschool and in our lives? How can it serve us? How much time do I want them to spend? And what will that look like in our lives? And then really think about the things that if you're taking this out or you're reducing this amount of time, then what can you add instead? Like, what do you want your kids' lives to be filled with instead? What do you want them to spend their time on instead? So I hope you guys have a wonderful week homeschooling, and feel free to leave me a comment with any questions that you have, or any suggestions, things that your kids love to do instead of sitting in front of a screen. And I am excited to hear those suggestions, or those things that I haven't thought of, or that my kids haven't done yet. And so I thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you again in next week's video.